I've realised something, right? In Odyssey, you've got one extreme, and in this, you've got another. In Odyssey, you have too many side quests, things that shouldn't be side quests being side quests,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And that's the only thing in the world to do besides from forts and caves and bandit ground.
Yeah.
In this, you don't have any side quests besides from maybe searching for somebody in the camp. So not the camp, the settlement every now and then. You've got the occasional thing that pops up, sure. But for the most part, you don't have any side quests, really. Everything's main story. Or you've got world events where you go and do these, like, 15 to maybe 90-second just things that you can do in the world that don't derail you too much. And the extreme comes in when you realise that you need a balance between actual fleshed out side quests that take a while and give you some form of narrative experience to enjoy and appreciate and get used to a character in a story and stuff like that. And then in the world events, then you can have those are the things that don't necessarily cut it. And I think in that because they don't do that and everything's a side quest, and I do understand why it had to go that way, to be fair, but at the same time, it becomes a point where there are things there that could have been more but weren't. For example, there are a few occasions where you run into someone in the woods. One that I think was very recent was I was in the woods, I came across this woman singing or humming or whatever she was doing, and there were just corpses everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Like there was all sorts going on. There was like corpses, people writing letters and stuff if you look. And then you just leave the house and there's this woman singing about, and then she attacks you. And then you just kill her. And then that's it. Bam. Serial killer done.
And it's a stupidly silly, over-the-top scene as well.
You want to know what? Do you want to know what I love about? Now this is where I'm going to give Amir a big throbbing erection because I'm going to relate it to Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah.
There's a serial killer in that game called Edmund Lowry Jr. It's a reference to Eddie Lowe from GTA 4.
Yeah.
But there's an actual serial killer quest with it called American Dreams. Well, side mission, shall we say? You can come across this 3 ways because there are 3 bodies that you can find in different parts of the map. These bodies are dismembered to fuck. And usually in them somewhere is a clue that's trying to lead you towards the killer, that the killer wants you to try to find him.
Yeah.
You know? So once you find all 3 clues, you get a map. It says on the back, "Can you find me?" And then on one side you've got a map that just shows, it's not a map really, it's just a marker on an entrance to like a cellar in the woods. So near Valentine you go to this entrance that sort of lines up with what's there. You go down, there are corpses everywhere, you've got letters in one room, you can read loads of stuff. There's a letter drafted up to be sent to a newspaper talking about how you shouldn't be writing about this killer because this guy's clearly very dangerous, etc. It's obviously a load of ego tickling from the killer, if you know what I mean. It's like just plays into that a little bit. And there's another letter from, I think, the killer's mum or something that you can read there as well. And you can just see the brutality in this, the extent of that. You get into the next room and you get knocked out by the guy. You wake up, you're laying there, and then you just throw a decapitated head at the man and knock him out, and then you take him back to the sheriff, and then you've turned in a bounty and get paid for it, depending
That's
on
a whole experience.
It's an experience to have. Whereas a world event, which is it works sometimes, but the world event can be over in a matter of minutes, and you don't have that experience of wow, I want to learn more about this. Well,
yeah, it's not like I'm gonna find this myself. It's just
there was one really, really cool one that I think would have been so much better in that format as well in Valhalla. Like what happened was I came across this hermit man sitting at the side of the road. He had a hood on and all that stuff, and I spoke to him, and he said something about a couple of guys asked him for directions and that they went that way or something, and he hasn't heard from them since. He just heard noises. So you go in there, and they're all dead. They're all dead by mysterious means. So you investigate and try to find out what happened, and then you just get like this. You know how sometimes have those investigation scenes where it just shows like Eivor reconstructing everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it just shows all sorts. It basically shows one theory that Eivor has where they've been poisoned or something. Then it shows another theory where that guy from the road was just sat in the tree. And it says maybe something else, maybe some other fate befell these men. There's this bloke in the tree, just looking down at them. You go back to the road, and the guy's gone. And I'm thinking to myself, that was cool. Could have been so much more.
Yeah.
If it just had that detail and depth. They don't all need to have that detail and depth. Some of them can be fun and silly or whatever the fuck you want them to be. Some of them can be, whatever, because that's just there to fill the world a bit. But sometimes you do actually need to go and tell a story that you find in the world properly, like you see in games like Red Dead Redemption 2, where you just go there, you don't expect to find a story, but you can. In fact, a lot of that isn't even structured in quests. In Saint Denis, you can hunt down a literal fucking vampire, and a lot of players would never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like most of the little side things in Red Dead Redemption 2,
They're there for
like
you
I
to
haven't
not
heard
notice.
of ever. Yeah, like I only found out about the other day about the rapist like little side activity.
Oh yeah,
thing.
no, that guy's in the swamp.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
that
come in,
shit's
you walk in,
terrifying.
knock him out, and then you wake up outside with your cores drained. Then you've
Yeah,
got the
it's
Aberdeen
fucking horrible.
pig farm, which is
Yeah, the Aberdeen pig farm's good.
to an incest couple, and you just have Arthur's face go, what the fuck? You see, it's stuff like that you find, and it can go in a load of different ways because it's not tethered to say being a quest or a mission, and it's not tethered to being a world event, and there's no identity to it, and there's no marker to tell you what exactly it is. Like, when I say identity, I mean identifier. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so it's just there and could be literally anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think Valhalla tried to do that, but
it's not quite what it did. What it did is it gave you loads of locations to go to as points of interest.
yeah, it's like a primitive version of it.
It's a fledgling idea, but I think it should become more of there's something here to find, but we won't tell you where it is. You'll just come across it, and it will be like a little story or something. Maybe it won't be. Maybe it will be a one-time thing. Maybe it will be a mystery that you'll unravel as you go without realizing. Maybe it will be something else. There needs to be more versatility to it all. It doesn't need to be just one extreme or the other. There needs to be a diverse range of things that you can do in this world space that actually feel worth doing, and then you can justify having a massive open world, really, can't you?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think as well with these world events, Ubisoft don't like to do anything that takes you out of the open world for too long. They used to be able to even make like linear sections, but for some reason now they're like, if anything takes you out of the open world we've built for too long, it's bad, and you can't do that. So they're like, well, a world event, we could send you down this path of figuring out this mystery, but then you're going to be taken out of the Viking fantasy, so we can't have that. So
it's not even a thing they have to sacrifice. Like, you get taken out. Let's refer it back to Red Dead again, shall we? Mm-hmm. You get taken out of the world of Red Dead Redemption 2 for one chapter in the story to further the story. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you're left in this open world and you find these things in it. They're just a part of it. They're just a natural part of it. It doesn't necessarily have to conform to set pieces. I loved set pieces. In Revelations had some brilliant ones. Brotherhood had some great ones, some of which I didn't even know existed.
Spain in Brotherhood
until
was
recently.
Brilliant.
Yeah, there's some mad set pieces that were proper good. You don't always have to be in this world space, but you don't have to sacrifice that open world to have something like that feels concise and deep.
Mm-hmm.
I think the open world has to lend itself to stuff like Red Dead 2's method of like telling side quests, though, and none of the Assassin's Creed worlds have. And to be honest, I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't think they can do it with Assassin's Creed. They just don't have the vision that Rockstar has. It's just not the same. Like I think Rockstar is unbeatable personally in terms of open world games at the minute. And I don't think Assassin's Creed is the series to dethrone them. I'd love to be proven wrong.
I mean, when looking at it from the outside, I agree in the sense that I don't think Assassin's Creed will ever live up to that standard of open world storytelling. But there's no reason why they can't
try. Yeah.
Try. You know what I mean?
No, definitely, I agree.
And I don't feel like at the moment that they're not trying to be Red Dead. They don't have to try to be Red Dead or Grand Theft Auto or whatever. They don't have to try to be The Witcher, which is something that you need to drill into their heads.
Yeah. Stop trying to be the fucking Witcher 3.
Stop it.
You don't have to try to be other people. You know what you should be?
Yeah,
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, exactly. And you wouldn't need to worry about these random world events if you stopped making entire countries your fucking map. A city is enough. A dense city, a dense urban environment. That's fucking Assassin's Creed with meaningful movement through that space. That's what the game should be about. And if you want to throw some side content in there, go for it. But make sure it aids the story that you're telling, because Assassin's Creed has never been, or shouldn't have been, at least when it began. It wasn't this open world, open choose what you want to do experience. Sure, there was an open world there, and you could go through it, and you could choose to do other things. Everything in that open world, though, served the story that was being told, and the story guided the open world content. It was split up into chapters through memory sequences. Every time you open up a new memory sequence, a different part of the world opens up and you get more side content. Sometimes stuff will be closed to you from memory sequence because there's particular stuff that you can't do there. It's a very linear game. It's maybe an evolution of something like a Mafia 2 almost, where it's definitely more open than Mafia 2, but Mafia 2 is always about it's open world that you can go and explore, but it's split up into chapters. It's
more of an elaborate backdrop.
Yeah, for sure. And Assassin's Creed's more than that. But if you look at Assassin's Creed 1, that game was just the main story missions, and the cities existed there to be the space that you did those within, and they were like big Hitman levels, really, like a bit more simplified than that. Obviously, it was not as developed as like a Hitman, but when you've got these big cities, you go into Jerusalem, and then that's your environment. Like, what do? You've got to go do viewpoints, so you find the investigations, you do those, it gives you information about your targets, you go speak to the bureau leader, you take out your target using the information that you learned, and then you escape from the city. And like, that's the mission that you do, and that's what the world exists there for. And I just think that like with Valhalla, they wanted to do so much in this game at once that I think the world at some points loses purpose. And there was an article that I retweeted about, and it was a bit of a meme. I was joking a little bit about the negative space in the world, and that sometimes there's absolutely nothing to do for loads of time, and it's this big open space, but that's brilliant. And that's what they were saying. And I understand negative space and the way that it works and the way that it can be valued in open worlds, like the deserts in Origins are fantastic, for example. But I think that there's a point where negative space can become too much, and there are points in Assassin's Creed Valhalla where I would hit follow road, go to objective, and I would sit and look at my phone because I didn't care. There was nothing there, and like the novelty of this world's gorgeous wears off after a bit, and the world is so big that is an issue. And when you play Red Dead, for example, I never felt that, though. I always felt like what I was doing was engaging. If I say I was riding,
there was no follow the road.
Yeah, exactly. You had to engage, but then they had to think engaged. Like Rockstar had to think. Well, you can't just sit and follow the road. They are going to be engaging in this travel.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
what can happen when you go from A to B? We need something
People will
there,
show
right?
up.
Yeah.
People will show up. You have to avoid other horses, stuff like that. If you don't, you'll just get sent flying. You have to keep your head on the game, and then every now and then, someone will come up with like, "I've been bitten by a snake," or people will try to rob you. You'll get to a bridge, maybe there are some O'Driscolls or some other bandits that just like there with their guns ready to, do you in, or maybe
like someone's trying to like race you because they like your horse or something like that.
Race you, or maybe there's a guy who wants to challenge you to a shooting contest, or maybe you come across one of the side missions. Like for example, you could come across a couple of people who ran off a chain gang. You can come across some, like I said, the serial killer thing. That one you find right outside Valentine, usually really early. Stuff like that. It's always there. There's always something. Sometimes you'll be in a town and you'll be drawn to something, like a serial killer prostitute in Valentine, or, like I said before, writing on the wall in Saint Denis that leads you to a vampire, or some house, but there's a window that you can climb through. So you go on through, and there's a laboratory in here with like some man-made mutant thing. And there's just so much.
There's so much in Red Dead,
and it's that systemic finding of things, and Assassin's Creed needs. And I saw Darby said this on Twitter, was that early versions of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they had a much smaller world, and they were like, well, you were in Jorvik and like you could see London, and like that was weird. And it's like, not necessarily. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with scaling down the size of worlds if it benefits the engagement that the player finds. I don't need...
That's what they used to do.
Exactly. And I don't need...
Rome isn't one-to-one in Brotherhood.
Oh, not at all. Not even close. And I don't mind I don't need to be 10,000 meters from one end of the map to the other. Like, it's unnecessary distance. Whereas when you're playing, like...
Pointless.
Look at, like, this is... So, like, you said on Twitter yesterday, George, about Black Flag, and the way that they structure that world. Like, it is not a scale recreation of the Caribbean. It's tiny compared to, real life. But the way that it's scaled feels so perfectly made. Like, they don't try and make it the biggest yet, and a lot of it is negative space in terms of water, but like there are stuff you can do. Like, you'll always find ships, or you might find a shipwreck where you can go diving, or you might find like a little island or something like that, or you've got these bigger spaces.
Do you think though the way that technology has actually hurt Assassin's Creed in that way? Because when you're playing Black Flag, the map sort of fades away so you can't see it, whereas if you made Black Flag now, you could see from one end to the map to the other. Would that change that feeling, you think?
What do you mean?
No, I don't think it'd change anything about Black Flag, personally. Like, if I could be on one end of the map and look all the way to the other with this crazy draw distance, I think that'd make it even better. Because I could look to the other side and I'd be like, I can go there if I want to, but I'm not going to go there right now, I'll go there later. Like, I like seeing things in the distance and going, I can go there. Not necessarily a map that's so big where I'm like, fucking hell, I'm going to have to like ride for like 17 minutes to be able to get to the other side. I want something that feels massive, but doesn't take a ridiculous amount of time out of my day for me to travel around, because then I'll just use fast travel and it's not fun. It completely defeats the point of an open world.